Okay. All right. When you create a story, it's going to give you some templates. Don't use a template because you're just going to be mad because you're going to try to change the template. Just start with a blank story. Okay. And it'll look like this. Basically, the ways to edit it, you just kind of click on stuff. And if you want to add boxes, you just go to the little line and you click the plus sign and you add boxes. Okay. Now I'm going to come out of here because I've already started a model tutorial here. Okay. This last week, we've been talking about stress. We talked about stressors for millennials and burnout. We talked over the weekend about stress and Gen Z. So y'all stress. Oh, and speaking of, if you weren't here on Wednesday, I felt like we were really not Wednesday, today's Wednesday, Monday. I felt like we were getting some stuff out with talking about our fears about like mass shootings. And lo and behold, Monday night, we have another mass shooting, you know, in Colorado.
That was weird.
Wasn't it weird? We had just been talking about it. In a grocery store, 10 people killed in a grocery store in Boulder on Monday night. And do y'all remember we were talking about how this is, you know, COVID had kind of been the pause or something for that kind of stuff. And now that things are opening back up, we're seeing it. Like, and like, isn't it sad that we're back to normal? I keep hearing this rhetoric of like the back to normal is dealing with constant possibility of mass shootings. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up. Yes.
There's like this thing and it's like that just adds to it. Another like mass.
I know. And Haley had brought up, you know, and my husband later that day had brought up to Colorado in particular, and, you know, how these kinds of events plague that area. But I mean, they can happen anywhere. But I thought that was so ironic. You know, we had just been talking about it. So we were talking about that. And then on Monday, if you weren't here, we also listened to a 5-minute clip. It's from NPR on how stress hormones, if our bodies are constantly flooded with stress hormones, that's basically like a fight or flight response. And if there is no real fight or flight situation, those stress hormones just like kind of eat away at our different, you know, systems and can cause all kinds of physiological health problems. And it was related, this particular article was related to racism and discrimination. So people who are often maybe racially profiled, or they have fear that there's going to be some kind of discriminatory incident, that their bodies are flooded with more stress hormones, and that can have these long-term health impacts. Okay, so I'm going to model based on our readings and what we've kind of been discussing in class. And y'all can see I chose this picture. Now, when you are in Sutori and you want to change the picture here, all you have to do is click. You can add captions or the image credits there, or Sutori has, if you go to edit up here, they use this Unsplash or whatever, and you can use all of these for free without having to acknowledge the image and all that stuff. So all I did was put in stress, I think, and just kind of scrolled through until I found an image that I liked. Okay, so that makes that part a little easier. The other good part is it's those images are high quality. Whoop. Oh, that just took it away for some reason. Okay. So at the top, the title I did was just impacts of stress on health. Notice that's a very broad title because I don't really know where all my research is going to take me at this point. I'm interested in seeing stress and health impacts. Okay. And then at the top, I have a question. It's my research question. What are the impacts of stress on our health? And how might racism or discrimination or othering be a factor in this stress? So that's just my interest. And you should have your research question at this point. Kevin, you asked about the annotation. So here I've made a source box for our reading from Monday, okay? And it is that scientists start to tease out the subtler ways racism hurts health. All right. Now, the way that I got the image in here is the very first thing I did up here. There was an ad media. Sorry. Okay, it wants me to remove it. If I remove it, there will be a tab that says add media there, and it'll ask you, do you want to add an image? Do you want to add a video, a link, whatever? I added the link to the reading, and it pops up there. So it incorporates it automatically. Then notice right under there, I've written the MLA. Well, this is my inspiration source. So this is a source I'm starting with. And I have my MLA citation. So y'all see it's crafted just like MLA would require. Under that is my annotation. So Kevin, you see how long that is?
Yeah.
It's, this is a fairly lengthy paragraph, but I was able to write it pretty quickly. Basically, what I would do, the very first thing is build your credibility for your source. So I say here, in this source, science journalist Ray Ellen Bichelle highlights the associations between racism and health disparities. Okay, so very basic. It's just what she's doing here. Then here's a little bit of an analysis. She begins with anecdotes about racial profiling and builds interest around the question on whether or not racism can cause physiological health problems, including, and I included those from the article. Okay. Then I say she includes a study conducted by UC Berkeley's social epidemiologist, Amani Nuru-Jeter, who breaks down her research in looking at the connections between low birth weight and an immigration raid that happened in Iowa. It seems there's a spike between infant mortality and low birth weight in Iowa during the time of this raid that affected Hispanic women, whether they were US citizens or not. This association could mean that racism can have a physiological effect on people as young as infants in the womb. Okay, notice I'm not directly quoting at that point. I'm just kind of mapping what the source said, but I'm being specific. So Liam, you had talked about, well, all my sources are kind of saying the same thing. They might be saying the same thing, but they're doing it in different ways. So they're using different, maybe this source is using interview, this source is using research. Do you know what I mean? So that's where that analysis can help. All right. Then I say here, this next thing is really important. You want to admit that maybe your source has some flaws, limitations, or problems, okay? Even if it's a great source. And I would still use this source in a paper, but it's important to say here, Bichelle admits, since there is no thermometer for racism, it's hard to prove causation. Do y'all remember that from the other day? We were talking about it. So instead, we're looking more at what they call association or correlation. It says, but there seems to be overwhelming data that there could be a connection between the stress of the possibility of discrimination and health outcomes. Then there's just one sentence here. It just tells me how I'm going to use the source in the paper. I plan to use this in my paper as a clear path source that just comes from the assignment sheet. You don't necessarily have to use the terminology that highlights concrete data that these connections exist. Okay. Is this doable? You just had to do it, what, 4 more times with 4 more sources. Let's do this together with the piece that you guys were assigned today. Okay. And that was this story shed light on recent attacks on Asian Americans. Y'all, what are your reactions? What y'all write about in your homework response?
Wait, how'd you get that link in there?
Okay. I'm going to throw this away and show y'all. Let's see. Okay. So here's the article. Okay. Just grab the URL, come in, and remember you can place this anywhere. So you can put boxes at any point, in between. I'm just going to put it here, text, and up here, see that add media. I'm adding a link and it pops up. Okay. Now this is a source box as well. So remember, we're dealing with 3 different types of boxes. You've got source boxes, connections, and reflections. So I want to color code my source box because, just to make it more viewer friendly. And right below here, I'm going to start typing. So I'm just going to call this source 2. Okay. Remember, inspiration source is your first source. And y'all, you don't even have to say inspiration source if you don't want to, but a lot of us start our research because we've read something that has triggered an interest. Yeah, Carson.
So the inspiration source, that is a source, is one of the 5.
That's one of your 5. That is, oh, Carson's like, I'm over here trying to find. No, you can have more than 5, guys.
Okay.
5 is the minimum.
Okay.
The more you have, I think that, first of all, the more you understand your topic, more critically you're thinking about it, but also I think just the easier the writing of the paper will be. So if you go over, that's perfectly fine. And if you go over, you don't necessarily have to do, you know what I mean? You only have to do 5 for this project.
Okay.
You can collect as many sources as
So
you
I
want.
feel like it's like a good source, but it's not like, they don't word things like academically, like, or professionally. It's kind of like a casual, like, touching on it. And so I think my sources that I found from like NPR or that CQ researcher or whatever, I feel like they explain it better than the video does.
Yeah.
I just took that as like actual like inspiration, like I would like sparked an idea, like.
No, that's perfect. Like if there's a video or there's like a comment thread on social media or whatever, that's a source, and that can be kind of that anecdotal evidence, so that those stories that make you want to learn more about it. And that's fine. Okay, let's go ahead and make our MLA citation together. All I'm going to do is model from the one over here to the side. So if we go back, our author here is Michelle Martin. Okay, so in MLA, we do Martin, Michelle, the title of the piece, in quotes, because it's an article, story shed light on recent, attacks on Asian Americans. Okay. Now, y'all, I do these from memory because I've done them so many times. You might need to look at a style guide to do it, or you might use EasyBib or something like that. So this story, I think, comes from All Things Considered. Okay, so on NPR, they have shows within the broader NPR headline. Okay, now if y'all left out All Things Considered, it wouldn't be a big deal if you just put NPR. But I would put All Things Considered, NPR. Okay, the date of the story, March 7th, 2021. Remember, in MLA, it's kind of weird. You do 7 March 2021. The URL, which in this case is kind of long. For a while, MLA took URLs out. I wish they still did because it messes up formatting, but whatever. And then the access date, accessed, we'll just say today, March 24th. All right, now it's time for our annotation. So y'all, let's make it together. How should we start? Yeah, credibility. So let's look at Michelle Martin. There are different ways you can find info about her. Usually it's at the very end of the transcript. It'll tell you a bit, but watch it not do it here. Okay. So I'm going to go and just do a quick Google, Michelle Martin, NPR. All right, and this gives me some bio information. Obviously, I'm not going to include all of this, but I might look at what just kind of gaze down here, what I feel like is maybe the most, I could even say NPR journalist, weekend host of All Things Considered. And like she's been there more than 25 years, so you could say like veteran journalist. I mean, there are things you can do here. So kind of look over there. Veteran, NPR journalist, and host of All Things Considered, Michelle Martin. What's she doing in this? What is this piece about? What's she highlighting?
I mean, she's really, the whole show's focusing on like different instances of Asian American hate.
And when did this seem to spike or go up?
Well, they talk about how like COVID has made it like more, occur more often, but it's always occurred. And they use like, her guests use specific instances from their lives and stuff.
Yes. Okay, so highlights different instances of Asian American hate that have increased in the past year. All right. She provides, how many people are in it in the interview?
Right?
Yes, from 3 people, including, okay, so which one do you feel like is the most credible? Bless you, most credible person interviewed here?
I would say Jason Wang.
Yeah, okay, he's the one who owns all the restaurants.
Well,
Okay. Yeah, he's CEO of the restaurant chain. And then we have Russell Young.
Russell Young be the,
Yeah, so he's the chair of Asian American Studies at San Francisco University, State University, and launched this group, right? So this is the group that's been heavy on social media lately. If y'all have been paying attention to some of the Stop Asian American Hate groups. So we have him, and then we have Ida Yu, and she's an artist, I believe.
it says at the end, she's a freelance journalist.
Okay. Freelance journalist who covers art and culture. Okay. So I could talk about all of them, but I probably wouldn't, I might just say, including the founder of the AAPI or Stop. Group that is working to combat some of this this increase in hate crimes. Okay, so what has increased, guys? When we talk about hate crimes, what is happening to Asian Americans, or seems to have happened in the past year?
More people are like being like racist towards them and worse.
Yes, okay. So I'm gonna maybe start with that. Due to rhetoric surrounding COVID, there has been an increase in racial slurs. What else besides racial slurs?
It looks like they're getting like physical abuse too.
Physical abuse, so shoving,
Yeah,
being
like,
pushed down, particularly the elderly. So one of the people mentioned they've started a Stop Elderly Hate or stop or protect the elders or something in her community. Okay. So we might just start there, racial slurs and physical abuse. Of course, this article was written before the incident last week where the Asian-owned spas were targeted in that shooting. So there's been an increase in racial slurs and physical abuse in the Asian American community. And this is causing a lot of fear and stress. And then I might say, there was one part, if y'all look through the transcript, it's Professor Young. He says down here, there we go. He says, like Jason said, you're always hypersensitive to your surroundings. And I know that the respondents to our reporting center, we surveyed them and did a mental health survey, and they showed signs of racial trauma. So this is a longer lasting mental health, anxiety, depression. So this is longer lasting mental health, anxiety, depression, and somatic symptoms. This is sort of a nationally traumatizing moment for Asian Americans. All right. Discusses a survey that reveals that this could be a moment of national. I might quote that. Okay. Y'all, what about limitations? Is there something I could discuss as a limitation on this source? Would you say, yeah, Kevin?
Was she like only in a certain area? Like she was talking about like growing up in Connecticut and like New York. And like maybe her limitation is that her outreach on, and her like knowledge of Asian American hate is only in, it's like selected to a certain area.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I know San Francisco for Young. Well, Wang is from New York. And then I don't know.
Yeah, I could just.
That's like, maybe like, they need to expand more than just metropolitan areas.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might definitely have something to do, something that we could say. It seems like most of these instances are happening in metropolitan, because even the shooting last week was Atlanta, right? Though you could follow up, what might we say to sort of take up for refute that limitation?
I mean, these instances you're seeing like all over the country and not just in like specific areas. Like, yeah, the most, I guess, publicized instances of it are just in metropolitan areas where populations have been, but like, there's recorded instances of all this happening even in like rural, I can't speak.
Rural.
Even in like rural.
I know,
areas.
rural's a hard one. Did any of y'all watch 30 Rock?
30 Rock.
Oh, y'all are so young. Y'all, it is one of the funniest shows you'll ever watch. And one of the actresses in it, she's in a musical called Rural Juror. So it's like a rural,
Tongue twister.
a juror, it's like a criminal case in a rural area. So she has to say rural juror and she cannot. So it just comes out like rural juror. It's so funny. Okay. And then lastly, I'll end with, I plan to use this in my paper to show that there seems to be an increase in discrimination against Asian Americans that could have lasting impacts. Okay, so that's what's interesting me. Now, we're kind of running out of time. Is this helping y'all?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's doable. We've done the annotation. We started with the credibility. We moved into a brief analysis and we've left with, I plan to use it in this way. All right, now let's talk about connections. So this is where we take two sources and synthesize them. How can I connect the piece we listened to on Monday to what we just talked about, the homework piece?
Could you talk about how like they're worried about like, the future of them and like how people are gonna treat them? Cause I felt like for me, what I got from Monday's discussion was that it was like the fear of the unknown. And
Yes.
I feel like for them, they could start feeling that way because they don't know how they're gonna be treated in the future or if this is even gonna go away from them.
That's right. Perfect. There we go. There's the synthesis box. We just have to write it out. Okay. Now, where would y'all put it? Where would you put a connections box here? Because remember, you get to choose where it goes on this timeline.
Do you have to put it like after the two sources?
It's up to you, but I'd put it between them because you're making connections between them. But where it happens is totally up to you. So let's do that. Okay, I'm going to click here. And I'm going to change my color so that for the reader of this, I can see the differences, right? The different kinds of boxes. So and it doesn't matter what color, as long as you're consistent. So if this is blue, I can even call it connections, okay? I might say something like in Michelle's piece and Martin's piece, both are looking at the health effects of discrimination. So what would y'all say about, would you call Michelle's piece stronger as far as credibility? And I mean, it's not that, it's not credibility, evidence, just stronger evidence. Which one would you say has stronger evidence is what I'm asking.
Between the two. I would say NPR, but
Well, they are both NPR, but they're different shows. One's
I mean,
weekend edition.
The topic, probably the first one, right?
Yes, okay. Though Michelle's evidence is stronger when looking at physical health outcomes of discrimination. Because remember, there was that actual study about the raid and the low birth weight in Iowa. Not that Young had talked about a study too, but that study was focused more on, not on physiological health, but what? Discrimination. Okay, here we go. Martin's expert seemed more interested in the mental health outcomes, including anxiety and depression. Now, here comes where I'm taking this. So guys, what do you think? Do you think that the Martin piece doesn't really inform us? Or do you think there can be a connection here? I mean, what do you think? What might you argue putting these two sources together about what's happening now with kind of the Asian Americans being targeted? Yeah, Kevin?
It'll lead to like an increase of like health problems in Asian Americans. You can say that like the recent targeting.
We could see.
Doing the same paragraph.
There you go.
The future of racism.
There we go. We're projecting. Okay, we're looking at projections. We're taking this data and we're figuring out, okay, what could the future look like here? So after reading both sources, we could see evidence that if these trends continue, we may be seeing more health impacts on Asian or disparities, right? Because that's what we kind of look at when we look at racial breakdowns, see more health disparities in the Asian American community due to, you might even say, as like Young puts it, racial trauma. Boom, there's the box, okay? Do you think too that I could actually take that connections box and kind of move it over into a paper? For sure, I'll probably put more evidence in it because right now it's just kind of your baseline assumptions. I've read these two pieces and this is where I think this stuff is headed. Now, what are y'all's questions with these two sources? What would you want to know more about if you were going to continue researching? If I'm going to write this paper, where should I go next, maybe? There's no one right answer to this, by the way. But if this is the paper we're writing, what would I want to research next? I've got one on weathering and, stress related to discrimination. I've got one on an increase in hate crimes on Asian Americans, an increase in mental health problems because of it. Where do I want to go next?
Look for like more services that have to do with stress and like high, like intense situations, like, because I'm sure like hate crimes like are relative to like bringing stress towards people because no one wants to be discriminated against.
Okay, I need more. So this is now going to be our reflection box. Okay, reflection is where you as the writer are writing about your process. At this point, I need more sources to prove stress, let's see, just racism or discrimination. And stress-related illness. And say I went to OneSearch in the library's database. I tried with, starting with the library's OneSearch box, but it was pulling back all kinds of sources that didn't fit with my interest. So I decided to link to, let's see. All right. So y'all remember Montenegro? He's the one that was, they started with his anecdote. He was confused as a valet, like he went for this fancy dinner to celebrate his PhD, or that he got the job, I can't remember. And that somebody threw him his keys, because they assumed he was a car hop or whatever. So if I decide, look, I want to look into this here, right? I want to actually read his article. Now notice I'd have to pay for it if I went through here, but I could go and find that pretty easily through the OneSearch option. I might come back over here and say, I decided to link to one of the experts in my inspiration source, Roberto Montenegro. Article in JAMA. And you can even write about, I couldn't access it immediately. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, I went through the library's OneSearch, or I'm just really confused right now about search. I mean, you can write about search terms here. You can write about conferencing with me, so I sat down with Miss B. This is what we came up with. She offered some sources, whatever. So this is where you are just reflecting on your process and how it's building over time. Okay. Because that's an important part of research too, is to kind of be, that mindfulness work we've been doing is like putting yourself, being aware of yourself in the present moment. How are you dealing with things? Liam, you could even talk about bringing it up in class, and the, class helped you kind of think of some directions to go into. Okay. Now, what y'all don't want to leave out is at the end. So after I've done all this research, the last thing you have is your working claim. Okay. That would be your working claim for your future paper that we'll be writing. Okay, so for me, the claim may be as simple as kind of restructuring my research question. Ultimately, it is proven that there are impacts between racism and stress-related health, some, I don't know, physiological health outcomes or something like that. Okay. All right, we did it. How do you feel?
Great.
Great. You've already done this all, Maddie, because you thought we were peer reviewing today. Did this help though? What are y'all's questions now? Any questions about Satori or messing with it? If it starts getting glitchy with you, what do you do? If Satori gets glitchy, go to another browser, okay?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Do you have to do like a connections box for every piece?
No, I think that's 3. Look back at the assignment sheet. 3 connections boxes, which would make sense if you had, well, yeah, and 2 reflection boxes. And you could even start with a reflection box if you're just like, man, it took me forever to come up with my topic, or my question. But yeah, I believe it's 3, but y'all re-reference the assignment sheet. I think it's 3. All right. Can you do this by Monday? Monday will be peer review day, okay? Remember, if you go into our peer review folder, everybody has their own folder. Go into your name, set up a Google Doc, and just drop the link to your Sutori. Literally, like I could go to the top here. Now, I might have to share it, y'all. If I say here, share. Okay, yes. It's going to be set, the default is secret, meaning private. People can't see it, okay? So, well, actually, secret means people can view it. They just can't edit or comment on it, okay? So keep it like it is. Secret's fine. You'll go in and you'll just choose the link and then post that link to the peer review folder, okay? I'm available tomorrow and Friday for conferencing. If y'all need help, I can help you try to find sources, you know, whatever you need. All right, goodbye. Thank you. Bye, Zoom people. Thank you. Good luck in the research realm. Don't get too frustrated.